Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the new Naga and Quilboar reveals. The first card is the Weary Mage. It's a spellcraft unit. It gives a minion +2/+2, but if it's a Naga, it also gets reborn until next turn. So what stands out immediately is that you can pick this up purely for tempo, because you can put the spellcraft on itself. It doesn't say give a different minion or if it's a different Naga, so it should become a 6/3 that then reborns as a 4/1, which is totally fine. That is pretty good tempo. So that's a nice 3-drop to pick up. And then we also have some synergy we're about to see here. Coil Scar Sapper. It's a Death Rattle Naga that gives you 2 spellcraft spells. So if you reborn it with the Weary Mage, that is immediately a nice combo. It's also a 5/4. Pretty decent stat line. This looks like one of the combos to go tier 3 on turn 3/4. Sometimes your tier 2 shop is bad, you go 3 on 3. You hit these two together in the shop, that's super fun. Because you're immediately strong, and you're also getting some value from these spellcrafts potentially. And on tier 4, we have Tranquil Meditative. The spellcraft gives your spells that give stats an additional +1 attack this game. Your tavern spells, so not just spells in general. So that is a pretty slow card in that the spellcraft will not immediately improve your board, but you're getting a 5/6 on tier 4, and that's a pretty strong stat line. So in that regard, it is not a slow card. The effect is just a bit slow. So it seems like a fun card to pick up if you're leaning towards that tavern buff strategy. Usually when you see these 4-drops, you've already seen your lesser trinket as well. You have a little bit more of an idea what you want to do. And the 5/6 stat line makes it completely acceptable to put on your board. On tier 5, we have the Slumber Sorcerer. Death Rattle, get a Shifting Tide. Shifting Tide gives you +3/+3, and if it's a Naga, another +3/+3. Now, this is not spellcraft. It's not temporary, so those are permanent buffs. So that doesn't look too impressive, but if we combine it with some spell synergy, or we just in general amplify our spells, like for instance with the Tranquil Meditative, or we could even use the Coil Scar that gives us then spellcrafts, which then gives us the Tranquil Meditative spell. This could be a lot more than 3/3, and again we could use stuff like Macaw and Titus to get a whole hand of these. And now we're talking way more buffs, and if you can put them on Nagas, then you're getting a lot more value out of it as well. Then the Fire Scale Hoarder, we've already seen that in the Dragon reveal. Going to be pretty good for Nagas as well, potentially even better, because again, we see that there's a spellcraft that amplifies tavern spells. Shiny Ring is, a super good tavern spell to boost because it's only +1/+1, but it buffs your whole board. So if you give that +5/+5, all of a sudden you get some serious buffs instead of just 1/1. Now we have the tier 6 Naga card, the Fauna Whisper. At the end of your turn, cast Natural Blessing on a minion to the left of this. So that has some uses here for sure. First of all, it should be affected by the tavern spell boosting strategy. So this is a very reliable way to cast a tavern spell at the end of turn. It is end of turn, so it should interact with Drakari. You can have multiple of these. You could have that in Menagerie as well. Works really well in a Nala build because you can put this next to an Amalgam type unit, and then it'll buff your whole board. And the buff should be amplified again by any of the effects you've already cast. So it just seems like a fun endgame unit that you can either play in Mono Naga or Menagerie, or maybe even a different strategy that we can see where this is just Tavern Spell synergy, where all you need is to cast Tavern Spells and you say, hey, I'll just play this guy, and that's totally fine. As long as you have an Amalgam to cast on, it's going to buff your whole board anyway, which is super flexible. Then we have the removed cards. No more Mini Myrmidon, Shell Whistler, Shelemental, the Thrasher, Strategist, no Atissa, and no Gains. Wow. So you can immediately see that a lot of the spellcasting synergy is out, which is a little bit of a shame because we just talked about how it's very easy to fill up our hand with spells, but it's also very possible that that would be too strong if you can use the Tavern buff strategy, and in combination with that, also have an Atissa or a Lord of Gains double dipping. Although, Lord of Gains doesn't really work if you cast the same spell anyway. Strategist going is really sad because that was a super fun card to hit. If you power level to 5 and you hit this, it's just dopamine because you're like, oh, I got this so early. I can farm 6 reps with it later. Very, very fun card. Groundbreaker is not out from what I can tell. So that means that all the spell farming, all the spell casting should still amplify that. And we can still cycle some Nagas to get huge Groundbreakers. That is definitely the dominant Naga strategy in this meta right now. The lesser trinkets, the first one is Asheron Statuette. Get 3 random spellcraft spells. At the start of each turn, get 3 more. I think that's fine for 1 gold. I don't think that's great, but I think it's something you take if you already have a lot of Naga stuff, a lot of synergy, and you just want some spells being cast. It costs 1 gold, so even if you leveled to tier 3 really late, and with late I mean on 7 gold, which is kind of weird because that's a standard curve, but these days people are either going 3 on 3 or 3 on 4. You rarely follow the super standard curve where you go tier 3 on turn 5 in today's meta. But if you do, then you have 1 gold left over after leveling to 4, and then this is a perfect curve. So it could be useful for that if you have some synergy. If you don't have anything for Nagas, 3 spellcrafts would not be worth a lesser trinket. Archaic Scroll. After you cast 6 spells, get a random tavern spell. Now that is fun. That is a lot of fun. 6 spells is a lot, but spells should be points, gems, tavern spells, spellcrafts. You can get there quite quickly in the right setup. So if you already have a lot of spellcraft on your board, I'd be super happy to take this. Bashir Anemone. At the start of your combat, you give your Nagas plus 1 HP. And if you cast 4 spells, it's going to be 2 health, and then 3 health, and then 4 health. I looked at this for a while, and I didn't love it. It's not permanent unless you do something like Poet with an amalgam, which can work, I guess, but still, how much health is this going to give? I guess later in the game, when you are going through your spells like crazy, it does start adding up. But even then, right, you would have to make it permanent. I don't know. I feel like I would rather get a lesser trinket that gets me value right now than take something like the Anemone, but again, I might be undervaluing it. Then we have Lubber Sticker. This seems super fun. So you get an extra tavern spell as if you had a lubber on your board, but as a bonus, you get to buy one for 1 cost less. And the cool thing here is that it says the first one you buy each turn costs 1 less. So it's not like the spellcraft that rolls for you where one of them is discounted. Because quite often you don't want to buy that spell unless it costs 0, then you just take it, whatever. But you're not super excited about that discount. Whereas now you can use this to buy an Overconfidence for 0 or a Careful Investment for 0, which is just super fun to pick up. Or you can just get a reduction on 1 spell you buy. So this will give you 1 gold per turn and you get an additional spell in your shop, which can be really useful if you're already leaning towards the spell buffing strategy. Then for 6 gold, we get the Weary Portrait. I talked about this earlier, how generally speaking, these very expensive lesser trinkets are quite powerful, and this one is no different. You get some really nice synergy, which I talked about earlier. It's the pair you would like to go 3 on 3 for. You can now reborn your Coil Scar, but your Weary Mage spellcrafts are also permanent, so you can reborn your whole board of Nagas. The Death Rattle Naga should still be in. That gives you buffs based on how many spells you've cast. So if you have 1 or 2 of those with Reborn and Taunt, all of a sudden that is a ton of tempo. Obviously, your Coil Scars will all be reborn by then as well, because you can immediately do that. But it seems like, at the very least, a very fun thing to experiment with, and then see just how quickly these spellcrafts are going to get out of control. For the returning trinkets, we have Lorewalker Scroll. Overall, pretty unexciting. Works with Blood Gems, spellcrafts, but just tempo. Cathedral is super fun. Difficult, because the amount of times that I have forgotten I have this and copied a Blood Gem is too damn high. But if you can remember that you have this and always get maximum value from it, it's actually quite a good trinket. Rusty Trident, I've never really loved this, but now we are seeing some more exciting spellcrafts, especially with the one that can increase the stats on your tavern spells, so getting that is quite fun. And overall, they've been introducing some more value spellcrafts, like the coin and the free reroll, so who knows, maybe I like it more this time around. Then we have a greater trinket. You get a Thaumaturgist, and the buffs are now permanent. So this seems like something you would only take if you've been casting tons of spells and preferably already have several Thaumas, if not a golden on your board. But it's a really fun one to hit if you have been playing Thauma. It almost seems crazy if you have been playing, something like tier 2 Nagas, or you've been playing with ixxdeee, you've been playing with Thaumas, you've been buffing a Lava Lurker. All of a sudden, when you buff a ixxdeee, it's now going to be permanent on there. So we all know that if we have a golden Thauma and we just let the buff go through our ixxdees and then ultimately on the lurker, it's really fun for 1 turn, and then the ixxdees go back to being small. Now everything would be a lava lurker essentially, which is really crazy, right? It's a ixxdee that also has a lava lurker effect. So yeah, this can be very good if you have been playing this so far. Then we have Charming Panpipes. At the end of each turn, give your leftmost minion +1/+1. After you cast a spell, improve this. That is very easy to upgrade. It doesn't say after you cast 4 spells, after you cast 5 spells. It says after you cast a spell. So that means that you can stack this with Drukhari. So let's say Golden Drukhari +3, I don't know if you can get Lucifer on in the Trinket meta, probably not. So let's just assume Drakari. That is +3/+3, and you can cast tons of spells if you have Zesties, Blood Gems, Coins. Again, it doesn't say which kind of spell, it just says spell. So Gem, Coin, Spellcraft, Tavern Spell, you name it. This seems like you can get a huge cleave or something like a Myrmidon or whatever really quickly. And it says end of turn, so it's not like it is a temporary buff. Absolutely want to be running Drakari. We want to run a composition that can go through a lot of spells every turn, and then you can just make a massive minion. Seems solid. Now we have Dazzling Dagger, which is the counterpart to the Anemone. It's the damage trinket. It's +1 attack. It should be a flat aura buff because it says your minions have +1 attack, not give your minions +1 attack. And then it is improved by every 4 spells you've cast this game. So that means if you've been casting tons of spells up to this point, this is going to already have a significant buff to it. So I think that is the criteria here for this trinket. If you don't have a lot of spells cast already, it's very likely going to be too slow to move into this on your greater trinket turn. However, if you look at your board and the damage boost is significant, I think you can take this and be okay with it. Then we have some returning trinkets, big Lore Walker Scroll, same deal here. Not an exciting trinket, but you'll take it for tempo if you have to. Glow Scale Portraits, you get a Glow Scale, your first spellcraft every turn is permanent. That can give you Reborn Divine Shield Nagas. Now that we have Weary Mage, which is cool. There's a little bit more targets for this right now. So with Weary Mage and with Glow Scale, we can have Reborn Divine Shield Nagas, and that seems annoying at the very least. But I've never really been a super big fan of this. It's more like an okay pickup. I've even picked this when I was just playing Beast to give my Titus permanent Divine Shield. So you can get creative with this. Nothing says that you have to be playing Naga. I think generally speaking, this is more of a luxury trinket where if you already have a good setup and you're already scaling well, you can just say, okay, let me just put permanent shields on my stuff now. So I think that's more how I use this trinket. Then postcards. Wow, this trinket is crazy. After you play a Naga, get a random spellcraft. That is going to be crazy APM because you can get stuff like Silivos, you can get, you know, a lot of economy spellcrafts. Before they started printing these economy spellcrafts, it was a lot more difficult to go infinite or anything. So this used to be after you play a non-Naga, and it was really good then because you can play stuff like Elemental, right? Any kind of economy thing, Scout, Rodeo, but it's a pretty substantial nerf. It now says whenever you play a Naga, get a random spellcraft spell. I still don't think that's bad. I think you still have great synergy with Groundbreaker. You want to be playing Nagas anyway, you want to be casting spells anyway. A lot of the spells generate Nagas. You can cast Chef's Choice on a Naga, that type of stuff. Probably still good, but definitely worse because it's so much easier to play non-Nagas because, you know, that's the 4 other types in your lobby and neutrals. Whereas now it's only Nagas. Shaker Portrait is also back. You get a Zesty Shaker, and your Zesty Shakers give 2 extra copies of the spell instead of just the 1. This is so much weaker now that we don't have Deep Blue. Deep Blue was scales extremely well with this, but we do have Thama. So I guess if you have been playing a lot of Thama and you're pretty deep into that, you could take Shaker Portrait. Other than that, I'm not, you know, super big fan. And then Sushi Roll, same deal. You get a Spite Scale special, and your first 2 spellcrafts cast twice each turn. Feels more like a Deep Blue trinket. Deep Blue is no longer in the game, so more, you know, Thama is just not quite Deep Blue. It doesn't scale quite as fast, but I guess you'll take it if you are playing Thaumaturgist. Now we've arrived at the Quilboar cards. I almost wanted to say Druid, because I'm so conditioned to look at that and say, oh, Druid cards. Fun change with the colors. Glow Gullet Warlord. Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1 Quilboar with Taunt, and then play a Blood Gem on them. We're going to see that wording is relevant because we now have a new mechanic. It's, well, not really new mechanic, but a new emphasis on in-combat Blood Gem buffing. Skulking Bristlemane, same deal. Start of combat, play a Blood Gem on adjacent minions. Both of these are pretty sweet tempo, to be honest. I can really see them just getting nerfed because picking up a 3/4 on tier 2 that also buffs at minimum +1/+1 and maybe triggers some synergies or whatnot, that's a really nice 2-drop. Same thing here, summoning 2 1/1 Quilboar with Taunt and then also making them 2/2s. That's pretty hard to deal with when it comes to just your tempo. So these are very solid picks and probably makes tier 2 better if Quilboar are in. Then on tier 3, we have the Corrupted Bristler. It's got a Death Rattle where you summon a golem with stats equal to the minion's blood gems. Now, the way this works is it's not the number of blood gems, but it's the number that your blood gems buff, I believe. We've seen a trinket in the past, and we're going to see it come back, where you summon a golem equal to the blood gems, and that was also the number of buffs and not necessarily the number of actual gems played. However, maybe the wording is slightly different, and I might be wrong on this, so, you know, as always, feel free to fact check me. But that is a really nice unit for the late game regardless. Earlier, it's just a bit more tempo, but later in the game, you can do gem transfers to this thing. And then especially golden it, you could use eyes on it. And now you're summoning 2 golems with the blood gems. So it seems like a really, really strong in-game unit where you can easily run 2 of these and then golden them with eyes, gem transfer to them. And now you have a really big hard to scam unit because it also summons big units when it dies. So it seems really good. And we have Dreaming Thornreaver on tier 4. Avenge 4, so that is a lot, right? 3 or 4 is a big difference. Your blood gems give an additional +1 health this game and then swaps to attack next turn. That is awesome. So we've seen that in the past with early blood gem scaling, especially with Avenge, something that you can proc multiple times per fight. That's really good. Blood gems, they just do so well when you can buff them because you go from just 1/1, you can turn it into 20/20, right? It's such a big difference whether you're buffing 1/1 or 20/20 per gem. And a lot of these mechanics allow you to play quite a few gems because it still needs to be decent if your gems are a bit smaller. So these blood gem mechanics become crazy when you have a lot of buffs on them. Quilboar also, generally speaking, it's a type that gets one of the biggest boards in the game if you're truly, truly ever online. And with Thornweaver, you could run 2 of these or you could run a golden, and the front half of your board does need to be things like Mana Saber. But we see that there is some nice support on tier 2 now as well. If we go back to the Glow Gullet Warlord, if you have 2 of these, all of a sudden we are spawning Quilboar with Taunt. So if you have 2 of these, that's already 6 things dying. And the beauty is that because you play a blood gem, you are getting the value from the Thornweaver as well. So you're not just summoning a 2/2 with Taunt or a 1/1 with Taunt. It might be a 5/5 with Taunt. And that's going to help you take less damage as well. So that seems like an awesome combo. As I mentioned earlier, we did have this in the past where we had a trinket that allowed you to scale your blood gems. And when that was Avenge 3, it was just broken. It was really, really good. So I imagine Thornweaver, especially with the support of this new 2-drop, to also be very, very good. Then we have Needling Crone. Your blood gems give twice their stats during the combat, or 3 times. Now, because of the wording, you cannot stack these because twice is just twice. It's not an extra time or 2 extra times. That's how you know if something stacks or not. This should only apply on blood gems that are being played. I don't think it will automatically make blood gems that have already been played suddenly count for twice as much or 3 times as much. That seems broken if it does, because then you just always want a golden one in Quilboar and suddenly you're 3 times as big. So my assumption is that this is just huge support for the in-combat gem buffing, of which we're going to see a lot of other pieces as well. So for the returned cards, we have Thorncaller. It's on tier 3. I think this moved around a little bit. Tier 3 with the Battlecry and the Death Rattle, then tier 2 with just the Death Rattle. Now back to tier 3, Battlecry, Death Rattle. It's going to be one of the only ways to really produce gems in your hand, as we're going to see that there's some Quilboar removed that used to do that. So it is going to be trickier to generate gems. So Thorncaller, especially if you can play it on something like Lich King and it reborns, you can generate a lot of gems. Seems like quite a good unit to keep around. Hyper is back. Speaking about Lich King gets very happy if he has this early. Very, very easy high attack blood gems. So this is a super fun unit to get early. Bonker is back. That was changed. And that's what we talked about earlier with the Crone. This is now synergy. Whenever this attacks, play a blood gem on all of your other minions. So all of these buffs, anything that happens in the combat, unless it specifically states that it's permanent, is just for that combat. So it seems like Quilboar have a new emphasis on buffing the size of the gems and then putting a Crone on a board to double or triple that effectiveness, and then having a lot of in-combat gem generation. And Bonker is one of those cards. Now it says other minions, not other Quilboar. So you could technically just have Bonker in the mid-game, buffing your board, especially if you have 1 or 2 gem buffs, and it can buff whatever. Then 3 little Quilboar, like we said before, there's more emphasis on this in-combat gem application, and 3 little Quilboar is sort of the perfect minion to do that. You could run this with Titus, you could run this with Macaw, and especially with the Crone, this is going to scale quite quickly. 3 little Quilboar really surprised me when I played around with it the first time, because it looked like a pretty weak card, because I was like, oh, do I really care about buffs if they're not permanent? But you could even do something like 3 little Quilboar plus an Amalgam plus a Poet, and now all of those buffs are going to become permanent. And I think we are going to see some type of strategy like that if we have Dragons and Quilboar in the same lobby, because you can play like Reborn Macaw, Titus, 3 little Quilboar, an Amalgam or 2, right, and then a Poet, and you'll just get 2 huge minions. And a lot of the time that's enough to win a lot of fights. And then later on, you can add some scam protection and maybe some other Quilboar to benefit from the 3 little Quilboar buff. And even if you don't have all of that, you can still just run, 5 other Quilboar and a Titus, and that's still quite effective. Then Dark Gaze is back. This is a really fun card. I really enjoy this. Whenever you spend 6 gold, play a Blood Gem on 3 friendly Quilboar. So this is really the APM payoff. If you have a lot of economy and you can cycle through a lot of gold, this is a really fun card to play. You can play this with amalgams as well. So you can fit Dargaze Elder as your Quilboar in Menagerie and then spend a lot of gold and have this buff itself and say 2 amalgams. Very fun for that. And especially if you have a lot of gem buffs farmed up with the new 4-drop with the Avenge, you can then triple into Dargaze Elder later on and use that to start buffing up your board and getting the payoff from the gem buffing. Because as I mentioned, with Bonker being changed, we're going to see that Bopper is out. I'll cover that in a moment. Actually, let's just jump there. We see that Crystal Infuser is out for gem generation. We see that Gem Splitter is out for gem generation. No more Bongo Boppers. So that's a lot of cards that generate blood gems in your hand. So it's going to be more difficult to apply blood gems. Seems like it's going to be a bit easier to buff them, but harder to apply. Other than that, we also have Trailblazer gone, Board Gamer, Hog Rider. So the whole choose one package is out. And then Charlie out as well. Rugug probably had to go. Probably way too good next to a Dargaze Elder. And with all the in-combat gem buffing, this is also quite a good target to buff. And then, apart from the Dargaze Elder, we also have a Bristleback coming back, which is sort of the ultimate in-combat buffing, which is also a phenomenal card to benefit from the new Quilboar 2-drop, because that's a Quilboar that summons 2 Taunted Quilboar. This just seems like it's going to be very good. It just seems like Quilboar is going to have this very streamlined package. Oh, sorry, whacked the mic there. Seems like Quilboar is going to have this very streamlined package all the way from tier 2 to tier 6, where if you start with that Quilboar that spawns tokens, and then if you find the tier 4 that has Avenge, scale your gems, I think you're fine to sort of just commit Quilboar, because you're going to be relatively strong if you can get maybe just like a Bonker to buff your board a little bit, and then you just wait until you hit either Dargaze Elder or Bristlebog, and you already have an Avenge setup ready, because you needed an Avenge setup anyway for your tier 4. So yeah, seems quite strong to commit into Quilboar early-ish. I don't think you can do it with the 2-drop. I think you need the 4-drop as well. Now we have the new trinkets, Bloodbound Earrings. For 1 gold, you get the effect that after you cast 5 spells, play a blood gem on all your minions. That seems good to me, because again, it's 5 spells, which means gems, spellcrafts, coins, tavern spells, triple spells, anything. We did see that it's harder to generate blood gems in hand, so this might even be a reason to start cycling Sunbake and Relaxer if you have a lot of gem buffs. So I would say that once you have early Prickly Piper, or if you got lucky and you already tripled into the 4-drop that has Avenge, buff your gems, this is a super solid pickup, because then you can just cycle spells and make your whole board strong, not just your Quilboar. That is really nice. So even something like a support unit like Bran or Titus can now grow strong, and if you are running something like Piper, you probably want to run a Titus anyway. So it just seems like really solid synergy to buff your board, and maybe I'm overvaluing this, but this feels very cheap at 1 gold. Then we have Tough Tusk Sticker. Blood gems played from your hand, give minions Divine Shield until next turn. We did talk about how it is much harder to have a lot of gems in your hand, at least from my initial observations. So it's going to be more difficult to trigger this, maybe if you already have Thorncaller on the boards, but generally speaking, I think it's a bit early to take this as a lesser trinket, because essentially what it means is that late game you're going to like cycle Sunbacon to put gems on your stuff if you're not playing like a gem-oriented comp already. And then we have Gem Donation. For 3 gold, the first minion you sell each turn plays its blood gems on the 2 highest tier minions in the tavern. So the way how I'm reading this, you could stack all your gems on 1 unit, let's say 100 worth, start ambitious, right? And then you sell that, and that's plus 100 on 2 units. Then you could technically buy those 2 units, and if you have a gem transfer, you can now put 200 on 1 unit, sell that, and you get 400. That seems really good. So I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but it does require gem transfers, so it's not as easy as just, oh, we'll just double our stats every turn, and obviously you're not starting off at 100, and there is some work involved, but there is absolutely potential for this to just get out of control. We're gonna have to see exactly how that works. And then we have returning trinkets. Great Boar Sticker. For 1 gold, your gems give an extra 3 attack. Extremely sad, and whenever you take this, you're just not happy. But sometimes you have to. Calligraphy, this is what I was talking about earlier. This thing was broken when I think it gave +1/+1, or it was just Avenge 3, or I don't know what the previous version was, but I know that Calligraphy was just your ticket into hard forcing quills. If you got that early, it was so good. You just scale so much so quickly, and as we talked about, blood gems really do well when you scale them. They go out of control super fast. Then we have Lorewalker Scroll. Whenever you cast a spell, we talked about that with Naga, it's pretty but sometimes you have a lot of gem generation and you'll take it for tempo. Cathedral, same thing as with the Nagas. Great if you can remember that you have it. Huggy Bang, start of combat, give you a Quilboar, death rattle, get a blood gem. That might actually be relevant because we have a lot more spellcasting synergy these days. Whereas before, as I mentioned in the previous patches, it was easier to get blood gems in your hand. Again, now, from what I can tell, it's going to be harder to do that. So Huggy Bank's effect probably appreciated in this patch, probably got better. Then we have Hogwash Basin. Start of the combat, play 4 blood gems on all of your minions. So this is something you want to combo with the 5-drop that buffs the effectiveness of your gems in the combat. Because if you can get that golden, you now effectively play 12 blood gems on all of your minions, and that's a lot of tempo if you have the gem buffs going. So seems like a really cool synergy if you can match those two together. Bloodbound Earrings Greater version. After you cast 5 spells, play 2 blood gems. See, that's the thing that I don't get, right? What I talked about earlier. Greater trinkets are generally significantly stronger than lesser trinkets. And here, yeah, it's twice as strong, I get it. But still, just the effect of being able to put a blood gem on everything. I'm still talking about how the small one feels too cheap on 1 gold. But yeah, I mean, if you have the setup for it, this is a great way to buff your whole board. Basically, you know, everything the small one does, but better. But I think I prefer to just have the small one and then a different greater trinket to support it. Panpipes coming back here, same as with the Nagas. Coins, gems, tavern spells, everything counts. Get a Drukhari, make a big cleave. Bam! Bristleback portraits. You get a bristleback. That's so important because a lot of the time you have the setup, you're ready to go and you just can't find it. And I talked about it in all these portraits. The fact that you get the minion is a huge deal. But then also your bristleback plays blood gems on all friendly minions, which is great for Titus, because a lot of the time when you're doing this kind of death rattle, buffy type situation, it's so nice to have a Titus on your board, or you could run a cleave, or you could have a Bran, or whatever. It's just it's a nice little bonus, but we're already very happy to just get the Bristleback in a position where Bristleback would be very strong. Agam Sticker. At the end of your turn, play 4 blood gems on a friendly minion of each type. So end of turn, again, important. That means it can be amplified by Drukhari. Agam was super good once we were able to buff a lot of the blood gems. So we had Hot Air Surveyor plus Agam. That was a really nasty combo when that was live. Here it is pretty capped, but still, if you have Drukhari and we can make it golden, it's still 12 blood gems. If you were able to buff your gems, this is a great pickup, especially if you're in a position where you're not quite full Quilboar. You've played with the tier 4 guy with the Avenge, you have a lot of random stuff on your board to just feed the Avenge, and maybe you have like 1 or 2 types. You can take Agam Sticker and then use the fact that you have big gems, but you are lacking the gem generation, and just add Menagerie units to your board, like a Cleave, like a Shield, like a Myrmidon. So it seems like a good thing to pick if you were able to get your gem size up, but you haven't secured the gem generation yet. Then Big Calligraphy, Avenge 4 +1/+1 can still be worth it sometimes. Works really well with Bristleback because you want to play Avenge anyway. Lorewalker Scroll, pretty exciting. It's the big version. It's okay sometimes. Here, Blood Golem Sticker. Whenever a friendly Quilboar dies, summon a Golem with stats equal to his blood gems. Okay, I'm going to cross-reference for just a second. Rewind to tape. There he is. Death Rattle. Summon a Golem with stats equal to this minion's blood gems. Okay. So, I think that 3-drop is broken. Unless I'm still getting it wrong, which is entirely possible. I will not put it past me. But if it works the same way as a sticker, then I'm getting greater stickers on 3-drops. That seems way too good. And I can golden them, right? So yeah. I mean, this is a great trinket if you're playing full Quilboar because it makes you much harder to scam. Great boar sticker +2/+2, same as a small boar sticker. You're not happy if you have to take this, but sometimes you have to because you're just like, okay, I'll take it. I'll just buff my gems a bit. And then lastly, we have Jar O Gems. Each combat, after 2 friendly minions attack, you play a blood gem on your Quilboar. This got a lot weaker because they've removed Tough Tusk, which means that you cannot refresh your Divine Shield over and over and over. And that was kind of the biggest use case for Jar of Gems. You have Tough Tusk, you attack, you refresh the Tough Tusk shield. Now, do I think that this trinket is dead? Not really if you have enough size on your blood gems. Sometimes all you need is something to proc them. But that's kind of it. So this is pretty much only a pick if you already have massive gems when this shows up. And that was it for the Naga and Quilboar reveals. I hope you guys enjoyed that. As always, please let me know in the comments if there's something I missed, some cool combos, some powerful stuff, or if I was just way off on something. And another reminder that we are playing the early access event on the 25th. So if you want to see the cards in action before you can play them on the live server, make sure to tune into that. That's going to be 6 p.m. my time, CEST. I'll see you there.